Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7, Lars Alexandersson. Challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てして。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Great. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. You
俺
win.
を止めることはできる。
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てして。
New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
Battle. 俺を止められるか。
Round 1. Fight.
Kill.
Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose. Challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Dark Way. Dark Way.
KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight.
Dark Way.
KO. Final round. Fight.
Dark Way.
KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle.
Sa,
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
Dark Wave.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
俺を止めることはできる。
Get ready for the next battle.
さあ、始めよう。
Round 1. Fight.
Dark Wave.
KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You
負傷
win.
者が出た。手当てして。
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
俺を
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You
負
win.
傷者が出た。手当てしてくれ。
Challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. New challenger. New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. Great. Round two. Fight. Great. Round three. Fight. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出る。手当てして。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
Damn!
Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. Great. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. Great. Round four. Fight. Great. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. Great. Round 4. Fight. Great. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. Perfect. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. Round 4. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Yeah!
KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは勝たずい。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出て手当てして。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Great. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは勝たず。
New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てしてくれ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. Final round. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
俺を
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. Round 2. Fight. Round 3. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てしてくれ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Great. Round 3. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. You win.
俺を止めることはできない。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. 3. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てしてくれ。
Get ready for the next battle.
No pain.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは勝たず。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You win.
勝者が出た。手当てして。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You lose.
Gotcha!
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
こちらは片付いた。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. Perfect. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight.